Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So starting things off, guys, Tesla up 8% on news essentially that there's gonna be a stock split. Well, it's not necessarily that there's gonna be a stock split, there's a very high chance there's gonna be a stock split. Essentially, if you haven't seen, let me quickly pull up the tweet. Where is it? It was this one right here. Happened in the morning, actually. Tesla will ask shareholders to vote at this year's annual meeting to authorize additional shares in order to enable a stock split. Of course, long term, this is extremely bullish. The only issue is we don't know when this meeting is going to be. That's the problem. Like, is it in a week, in a month, in 6 months, in a year? Well, not in a year, but we don't know when exactly the meeting is. I think the last time this meeting was in October, I believe. But they haven't announced when the meeting is. I just found it funny how they posted this in the morning after, because Elon posted how he got COVID apparently. Obviously, he has no symptoms or anything, which is good. And then like the whole like Shanghai factory being, closed for the COVID pre-measures in Shanghai. And then they released that to kind of help out the stock a little bit, which is just hilarious to me. But anyways, obviously it's extremely good. So it's just a matter of when is this going to happen? Like, when is the stock split going to happen? What is going to be the split? All that kind of stuff, of course. And if this euphoria actually persisted. And the reason I say actually persisted is because back when Amazon announced it and it gapped up, it just completely sold off. And I think something happened with Amazon. I can't remember when it was. It was like somewhere around here. Amazon gapped up. And actually, honestly, Amazon actually held it fairly well for a few days. And then it kind of just started plummeting with the rest of the market, which isn't too surprising, of course. But yeah, Tesla holding on to its gains today extremely well, actually. Very nice candle. I would say it's like a neutral bullish candle. It's a very nice candle. It's not bearish. It's not insanely bullish, but it's more bullish than bearish for sure. But now let's figure out what is going to happen. So I was saying how last week, how we were inside this little channel here, and this could have went either way, right? Well, I think it's quite obvious where it went now, because the second it breaks above this area, it's going to obviously go up. Now, obviously going this up is kind of ridiculous. This is impossible to predict, because the only reason it went up this high is because the pre-market completely rallied, completely gapped up off of the stock split news. Of course, if the stock split news never came out, I honestly think we still would have went up today, because the Nasdaq and everything was up. I mean, though Tesla, I'm sure, contributed to that, but I'm pretty sure today would have been overall an update anyways. I think probably, though, at most we would have went to like maybe 1025 though. But this whole like news and euphoria ended up pushing Tesla substantially higher. So in case you're wondering what I'm personally doing, I'm just scalping right now, Tesla. Which scalping essentially just means I'm going in and out of trades like fairly quickly throughout the day, kind of day trading it. Because the main reason I'm doing that is mainly because, guys, I still stand by what I said earlier. Like, at some point, this is gonna drop, right? Again, I'm personally waiting for it, because I'm ready to load the boat. Like, I want to load the boat on the next like actual drop. In this case, I think the first drop, I want to start loading the boat and doing a small trade and swing trade probably is going to be on this gap fill. So the first thing I'm looking for, without question, is going to be the gap fill. But before we talk about the downside, let's talk about the upside, because I think there is still definitely some upside to be had. For Tesla, I think there's definitely a chance that there's still a little more upside left. How much more upside is the question? Well, at the very least, I still think I'll be very surprised if we don't, at the very least, touch 1100, maybe a little bit higher, like 1103, somewhere in that range. Like, I'll be pretty surprised if sometime this week, maybe like, I don't think it'll be tomorrow. I think tomorrow will be a red day / flat, and I think Wednesday might be a slow day. I think Thursday, if I had to take a wild guess, is where things might get interesting. But at the end of the day, with this market, you never know. I want to show you guys something else that's interesting after as well. But essentially, again, sometime this week, I wouldn't be surprised for Tesla to touch 1100. Now, the one thing we'll have to do, of course, as you can see, we have a little bit of a double top here, is obviously break this double top, which is 1097 / 1098, which really isn't that far from 1100. But again, usually they overshoot. So I wouldn't be surprised if we go to like 1103, 4, 5, something like that, somewhere in that range. And then we'll see what happens there. Either we kind of hover in that range for like maybe 10 minutes or so, and then we just fall back under, or if it falls back to 1100, buyers step in, the bulls just keep stepping in, calls keep stepping in, and we push up a little bit higher. Now, the realistic bull case I can see happening this week is probably 1115. Wouldn't be too surprised to see 1115 sometime this week. That wouldn't shock me whatsoever. And the slightly higher bull case than that also wouldn't surprise me is if we touch this overall red line at the top. You can see from the initial run up here, the run up here, and the descending wedge like this. Or like, not really a wedge, but you know what I mean. The descending pattern, if you will, coming down right over here. Wouldn't be surprised if we touch the top line of this right here. So that would probably put us somewhere in the 1130s. Also wouldn't be super shocking, but that would be a little bit more of a surprise to me. But at this rate, honestly, expect the unexpected in all honesty. So who knows, right? But the point is, those are the levels I'd watch for. The first level, of course, is to break above this 11, kind of 97 area. I don't think that'll be too difficult. If it happens, I think 1100/1105 is a done deal. Now, after 1105, if we don't break below 1100 too fast, so if we actually maintain the general 1100 area and don't fall like too far below that, especially I would say, as long as you don't fall below, assuming we break 1100, as long as you don't fall below like 1097, I do think Tesla has a decent shot actually at pushing up to this 1115 area. And I really wouldn't be surprised if that happens this week. Like, it really wouldn't surprise me too much. But again, I really think there'll be a pretty big bull trap. So just be really careful, guys. Again, when you're trading something, if you're an investor and if you're already in or whatever, you're good. Especially if you got in somewhere down here, like, you're chilling. But if you're someone that's like looking to enter here, again, not financial advice, make your own decisions, guys. Come on. You got to be really careful. Like, this is like dangerous territory to hold like an extended period of time. Like, I would argue this is essentially a gamble. If you're buying in at this price, hoping to push for 1115 or even 1130, in my opinion, it's a straight gamble. Like, you're pretty much gambling. It could happen, absolutely, but you're risking, like, how much percent are you risking to the upside? You're risking for potential, like, another, like, 3 to 4% to the upside for a risk of at least, like, 7% to the downside. Like, just be really careful. It's a very high risk, honestly, somewhat low reward, granted the amount of risk. Just keep that in mind, guys. You know, I don't want people to get caught, because this is easily how people get caught. They FOMO into this, which is why I'm scalping personally. But either way, so that's essentially what I'm seeing to the upside, which I wouldn't be too surprised if at the very least we see 1115, especially 1100. 1100, I would say should be like an 80% chance. 1115, I would give like a solid like 65% chance, and then touching the top of this red line, maybe like a 35% chance. That's essentially kind of roughly what I'm thinking. But then looking to the downside, so there's a few things we'll cover, but looking to the downside, where are we going to go to the downside? Well, the first and foremost is, of course, I would say number one, this kind of like 1071, 1070, this general level right here. If Tesla falls below it again, then get ready to start looking at this becoming resistance. If it does become resistance, and especially if 1058 breaks, it's like general like 1058 to like 1054 level breaks, especially if this breaks, and we start entering this territory, then we can like probably start looking for the gap fill down to 1010. And if this happens, I wouldn't be surprised if people start loading puts. I really don't. And I also wouldn't be surprised if people start loading puts somewhere in this general like past 1100 range as well. Keep that in mind. But the gap fill, you guys know how gap fills work. They get filled, right? That's just how things work. Maybe it happens in a day, could be a week, could be a month, could even be a year. But they will get filled. And I think this one will be happen sooner than later, only because we've just had such a euphoric run that, you know, eventually the music will stop playing, guys. I keep saying this, I sound like a bear. I just don't want people to get hurt. This music will stop eventually, and it will drop, as it did over here, and it dropped, as it did over here, and it dropped. It'll happen again at some point. Just keep that in mind, guys. Don't FOMO in too hard. Be patient. Very important. Patience is extremely important here. It's even hard for me. Like, I'll be honest, it's extremely hard for me not to FOMO in. I love Tesla. Believe me, I just want to own as many shares as possible. But it's just like, this is just really, 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 really high right now. Anyway, so comparing that, you can see on the 15-minute right here, right? You can see it's overbought, right? It's substantially overbought. And even though we pushed up for a higher, pretty much a higher high, actually, slightly here compared to here, you can see the RSI nowhere near as high as this was, number one, right? Same thing on the 30-minute. You can see here, for instance, on the 30-minute. Actually, is this on the 15-minute too? Yeah, same thing on the 15-minute here. You can see when we pushed up for this 1037 high over here, you can see the RSI was sitting at 87. And when we pushed up like substantially higher, the RSI got close, but not as high. So that's something to keep in mind. And now we're all the way up here, and this RSI is lower than it was back here when we were still chilling like around like 1010, honestly. So keep that in mind, guys. It is starting to show a slight bearish divergence. Same thing on the 1 hour. You can see here as we pushed up over here, the RSI is sitting all the way up at 87, and now as we push up substantially higher, it is setting a lower high, even though we're setting on the chart a higher high. That is a bearish divergence. You guys know how these play out. Sometimes it takes longer to play out. Sometimes if you get these euphoric, insane rallies, essentially like a short squeeze almost, then it kind of like messes up with it completely. But assuming that it doesn't just keep squeezing like this, or there's just not an absolutely enormous influx of calls coming in over and over and over and over, eventually this will play out the way I'm sure you guys can guess. So that's the first downside target I would look for once it starts going to the downside. I expect a bounce around this 1100 or 1,000 area, somewhere around this 1,000 to the gap fill, somewhere in that general range. I expect a bounce, potentially up to like 1040 at most, I would say. And then I expect a downside to start coming into the 900s somewhere. That's my current expectation. And I still overall want to see at the very least the teal line be tested. Like I really want to see the teal line be tested. That's really, really important. So I'm definitely kind of, waiting for that as well. Now, something else I want to show you guys is going to be this. So I use unusual whales. I have a link down below if you guys want to check it out. You can use my code and everything to sign up. I think you get a discount or something too. But one thing I want to show is the call premium. So in case people are thinking like, oh man, it's running up because of Berlin and because of Texas and the stock split, those contributed, especially the stock split. Don't get me wrong, it definitely contributes to it. But guys, it's a trader's market. It's an options market. That's essentially all it is. The majority of it. And this is a very good proof of it right here. So you can see pretty much every single option you can see here, the most active chains are for this Friday. And you can see the majority of them are calls. The open interest are mostly calls. You have some puts over here for 1,000 and 1050. The open interest is substantially lower than the open interest on the calls. Much, much lower, like a third, if even that, maybe even less, maybe a quarter, maybe even less than that, right? But the point is that the open interest overall for puts is much lower than the calls. You can see there's a decent amount actually here for the 950s for this week as well. 900, 950, decent amount of open interest, 6,000, 6,200, but still like, a fair amount lower than these bad boys here, which is why I wouldn't be surprised if 1,100 gets touched essentially sometime this week. I wouldn't be surprised. 1,200, I really think is pushing it, but this doesn't mean that it has to touch 1,200. This just means that the second Tesla runs up even to like 1115. I mean, these are already going to be printing a decent amount regardless. So that's essentially what I am seeing over here. The biggest premiums that are being traded for options over here, you can see it's a very healthy mix of bears and bulls. People selling calls, buying calls. So it's kind of all over the place. Hard to really pinpoint this too well, in all honesty. But I think the main thing to look at is absolutely this right here, where the calls being traded is just outweighing the puts by like a pretty healthy margin, which is why you're seeing Tesla just constantly do this. This is exactly what happened last week as well. It was just a disgusting amount of weekly calls just constantly flooding in, and it's essentially pushing up the price because the market makers have to essentially buy shares to hedge against this. And that's kind of how it works roughly, which is why sometimes you see like explosive moves like this. So that's essentially what I'm looking at, guys, right now. Let me know what you think down below. Thank you all so much for watching. It's a pretty wild market, guys, but again, be careful. That's all I'm going to say, guys. Be very, very careful. There's still some more upside left potentially. You never know. Could not be as well. It's very, very, very hard to predict this market right now. It's very hard to predict these moves. Some of these moves are just completely unpredictable. Like today's move, there's no way anyone can predict that unless you had insider information. There's no technical analysis. If someone tells you they had technical analysis that predicted a move to this right here, and it was like guaranteed, they're full of shit. I promise you that. No, nothing could have predicted this. This was just because of the announcement. A big portion of it, and then that flooded in the gates of people essentially getting calls and everything like that, FOMO, a whole mix of that stuff. But either way, guys, that's it for this video. Let me know what you think down below. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace, peace, peace.